Welcome back, everybody. Sean Tassé here with The Real Collective. Got a special guest on, Mitch Korman. Mitch works for a company called Korman Company. Good morning, Mitch. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. As always, if you guys are enjoying the show, please feel free to share this, like it, subscribe on YouTube, download on Apple Podcasts, download on Spotify. If you'd like to book an appointment with myself or Brendan, who's not here today, unfortunately, feel free to do so in the Calendly link below. Of course, I'm a professional realtor. Mitch is a professional lawyer. And we're going to dive into some of the sort of top 5 issues that we're seeing from a legal perspective in the market right now. So, Mitch, before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're all about?
What am I all about? I'm all about right now Toronto Maple Leafs and Raptors. Even though I know our audience is mainly in Ottawa, but I'm a Sens fan too, I must say. But right now, moving into the playoffs, that's what I'm all about. We're a real estate law firm, and we close deals all over the province. Last year, we closed over 5,000 deals, which makes us one of the biggest players in real estate in Ontario. We have people from Windsor. We've got lots of people in Ottawa, Kingston, Toronto, everywhere. Not too much in the North Country, but everything since pandemic, everything's done virtually. So we're able to close deals everywhere in Ontario, and we've got a great team. There's 15 lawyers on my team. We've got 35 support people, and that's what we do day in and day out. So I'm really happy to be here. Sean, I love supporting you guys and your team, and I hope that I can give some insight to people in the crazy market. It's funny, it's always a crazy market. We could have done this last year, and it was a crazy market, but for different reasons. And then this year, right now, this moment in time, another crazy market.
Yeah, absolutely, and we certainly do appreciate the support. One thing that I found over the course of the last 2 years is that in a lot of different industries, not just in real estate, not just in mortgages, not just with lawyers, but like across the board, there's some people who seem to be really excelling at giving amazing client service, and some people who are just lackluster at best on a good day. And you and your team falls into the first category, because there's so many times where I can connect with you directly, and I've heard other stories about agents doing the same thing, like, hey, I need this status certificate reviewed, can you do it? And you're in a position where, hey, yeah, I can. And most people, I think, don't have the same level of client service that you do. So we appreciate it. It's something that helps out us as agents, and helps out the clients that we deal with. So yeah, happy to support you as well. So it's a love fest here. So
Yep.
jumping into the first of the 5 topics that we wanted to get into today. A big deal right now is the bank of mom and dad.
That's it. It's when prices have gone crazy, we have a supply issue. There isn't enough supply on the marketplace, and it's been like this for a long time. Prices have shot up. I think in your market it's 23% over the last year in Ottawa. And like, how does the average young kid who's working at Shopify and making $150,000, whatever, they can't afford to buy a house? Maybe they have got good income, but they certainly don't have a down payment that's $200,000 when they're 5 years out. I bought my first house, I was probably 3 years in working, and I saved up enough money to buy a house. Now it's like, if you don't have help, you might have to wait 10 years, 15 years to buy a house. It's awful for young people to be entering into the marketplace. So where do they turn to? Bank of mom and dad. I listened to Benjamin Tal, who's the chief economist at CIBC, and he talks about the trillions of dollars that is on the sidelines of wealth in our country. And fortunately or unfortunately, like lots of parents have lots of money, or they've built up huge wealth. I mean, the parents that bought their house for $200,000 20 years ago, now that house might be worth $1.5 million, and they probably have no mortgage. So they're trying to think, how do I tap into the wealth that I have to help my kids? And it's a tough thing to do, because not every family is the same. So that's one of the things that I want to get into, because there are ways of doing it, but a lot of people, I come from a family of 4 kids, and my brother's also a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, so, but my two sisters aren't. So if my parents were going to help, me buy a house 20 years ago, what are they doing that's equivalent for my other siblings, or vice versa? They have to think about all these things, and it has to be approached in a delicate manner. So, the bank of mom and dad is not like walking into TD Bank. It's a whole different ballgame, and that's why I wanted to talk about bank of mom and dad.
Yeah, there's like you said, there's a lot of equity sitting untapped in these homes, and there's a lot of interpersonal dynamics that are involved anytime when you're dealing with a family, especially with a lot of people. That yeah, that's tough. And I imagine from a legal perspective, when you start to talk about, oh well, what are you doing for one and then not for the other, there could be long-term ramifications in terms of uh, one of the parents passing and wills and estates and all that. So it all probably flows in together.
Yeah, I got a call yesterday from a friend and client that I know. He wants to help his daughter buy a condo, and his daughter has no down payment. All the money's coming from dad. The daughter has been in a relationship with a guy for 3 years, and dad loves the guy and hopes they get married and live happily ever after, but is concerned, what if I give my daughter the down payment and then they get married and then they split up 6 months later? What happens to that $200,000? And it's like, well, he probably gets, well, if it's 6 months later, he's not going to get half, but if it's a year or more later, he might get half. So the bank of mom and dad in that scenario is scared.
Yeah.
How do I navigate that? And there's many techniques to navigate that, but if you don't talk about it, you're not going to get to the next level. If he didn't reach out and call me, then he's just saying, you know what, I don't want to do this. I'm nervous. Let them figure it out for themselves. And that's not a good answer. There is a way to do it. And do you want me to go into the ways, or do you want to leave that as a
Yeah.
hanger?
Let's leave that as a dangler, and we'll dive into it in the second bit, because I think it sounds like a sort of a prenup for like almost between that relationship. So that's interesting. We'll unpack that a little bit more, but let's jump into the next one. What what are we seeing right now when clients are going all in? So going, pushing everything that they've got into one property without conditions.
So the reason why I like that topic is because that's the way it's been throughout this pandemic up until, I would say, 2 weeks ago. Because all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, with rate hikes and the war, it's like the tap turned off for real estate for a short period of time. It's actually turning back on now. Now that the rate hike has already happened, like today, people were scared for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Now that the band-aid's been pulled off, we know that rate hike is half a point. Like, people are now going to come back to the market, and it'll probably be the way it was before, with bidding wars on everything. So unfortunately, if we had a balanced market, buyers and sellers on relatively even playing field, the buyers wouldn't be forced to make decisions on buying a place without having any conditions. So the conditions we're talking about are conditions on financing. Well, that can be satisfied if you do spend enough time with your mortgage broker and they make you feel comfortable with what you're doing. But conditions on inspection, if you're waiving that, that's troublesome, because you're not having the opportunity to go through that house and make sure that everything is fine. You don't have your independent person with you holding your hand and going through it all. And it could be perfect, but there are tons of horror stories also where it's not perfect. And that little musty smell that you smelt in that basement, well, that's a lot of mold behind the walls. And it was only a little bit musty because they had coffee brewing, or they recently cleaned it, or something like that. But the professional who's got mold detectors or moisture detectors and is going around the walls, the professional picks up on those things and knows whether or not things need to be delved deeper. So going all in without conditions is problematic in the marketplace we're in.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of conversations in different markets. I think conversations both on the Quebec side and as well as in BC, where they're talking about necessitating some sort of, and even in the in the budget, right? They were talking about some ways to protect buyers against that. So we'll see what transpires. Obviously, things tend to change slowly. But so talking about inspections, and this will be the third point that we'll bring up. What are the pitfalls of pre-inspections? Because hey, if the buyer doesn't have time to do the inspection, maybe the seller should be the one doing the inspection. But is that there's a risk there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a risk that can be mitigated. So for example, there's lots of great reputable inspection companies out there. And I don't think deep down in my heart, I don't think that inspectors are in cahoots with sellers and are deliberately trying to pull the wool over a innocent buyer's eyes. So, but when you walk into, an open house and there's a home inspection sitting on a coffee table, or you want to present an offer and the agent on the other side says, here's our pre-inspection that we did by Carson Dunlop or one of the other inspectors, can you rely on it? And the answer is no, you can't rely on it. You can read it and you can, understand what's in it. But if you really want to rely on it, you actually have to create a contractual relationship with that home inspector. So the way to mitigate the situation that you're in is you reach out to the home inspector and you say, Mr. Home Inspector, I want to buy this property or bid on it. Can I get a letter of transmittal from you so that I can rely on the inspection that you did of this house? And the home inspector will usually say yes, and that will be $200. And then you say, but I don't want to just rely on it. I also want you, if I get this house, I want you to spend a half hour or an hour with me re-inspecting. Like, I want you to just explain how the house works to me. And the home inspector will probably say, yep, that'll be another $100. That's money so well spent because A, you can rely on the home inspection. So if there's something terribly wrong with that inspection, if you find out that there's, crumbling parts of the house that need, structural work and the inspector missed it, inspectors have liability insurance. There's some place that you can go after if they miss something. So, but you can't go after an inspector or their insurance if you don't have a contractual relationship with them. So you get a letter of transmittal from the home inspector, plus, pay them to spend time with you. It's such money well spent.
And that $200 fee for the letter of transmittal is for them to write up the letter and pay their insurance company, and they're probably not making any extra money other than covering themselves, right?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you want to use the tools that you have in the situation that you're in. If you're in a balanced market and you could put an offer conditional on inspection, then you'd hire your own inspector, pay them the $500 or whatever to do a thorough home inspection. And by the way, whenever you do a home inspection, you should always be there the entire time with the inspector because you need to learn about your house.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually have a plumber in my house right as we speak. And I've got a faucet that's been leaking. He's replacing a faucet for me. And I said to him, by the way, have you ever dealt with radiant floor heating? Because I bought this house, it was brand new from a builder, never figured out how this radiant floor heating works. I don't know if it works or if it's good or whatever. It's in my furnace room and I got all these pipes. He says, no, I don't do radiant floor heating. But my point is, all this time, I have no clue on how that system works. And I should have had somebody come in with me when I bought this house 10 years ago and go through, there's a number of things in my house. I still don't know how it works.
Yeah, when we bought the last house we were in was a new build from the house, and we had an inspector come through, and that was the first time we were living in a house that we owned. Right, it was the last house that we lived in was the first one that we owned, and we had an inspector come through because I was like, I don't know how to work a thermostat, because the house that I was at before, you would just turn up or down the baseboards, right? So there's or an HRV, right?
Yep.
What percentage moisture do I want in the home? Anyways. Yeah, there's a lot to that. We did do, if you're still watching this, we can also put a link below in the description about when we did an interview with the home inspector. We had a home inspector, Peter Weeks, on, and he went through sort of a similar type of conversation and the 5 different times when you can do an inspection. So that's a really good point about the letter of transmittal. And then so the fourth piece we wanted to touch on today was so you're pre-approved. So what?
Yeah, exactly. So I had the best example I can give you was a property that I just recently dealt with in Canada, where the purchasers, great jobs, government jobs, and they're pre-approved. They can buy up to, let's say, $1 million, no problem with a $800,000 mortgage. So they buy a place, and they bought a condominium, and the condominium had serious condominium issues, in the sense that there were many special assessments. There was mold found through the building. They're in the middle. There are multiple buildings, and they're in the middle of remedying all the problems with that building. And these people need CMHC financing, and they qualify for CMHC. They qualify in every way possible to get the mortgage that they want, and except CMHC will not give a mortgage for that particular building. So here you've got people that are otherwise perfect, but CMHC just won't lend on that building because the building itself, the condominium, has lots of issues with it. And the clients are like, but we're pre-approved, but I was assured that I can get this mortgage. And pre-approval doesn't mean a commitment. You only get the commitment once you've agreed to buy something, and you've sent that agreement of purchase and sale into the mortgage broker, who turns it into the bank, and the bank actually sends you a commitment. And even when they send you a commitment, there's usually a lot of conditions that go along with that commitment, but the conditions are usually not insurmountable. At least you have a written commitment that, yes, we will lend money for this purchase of that property.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that the people need to know, because if you're in a situation where you're going all in and you're waiving your financing condition, you got to be really, really sure. And unfortunately, that's where it could have been handled differently. Like the agent that we were working with and the client, they knew that there were issues with that building. Because right in the status certificate, it said there's going to be a special assessment, and we've had other special assessments. These are the issues. So the issues were disclosed. But as soon as you see those red flags, you got to send those red flags into your lender and make sure that they're okay with it. Because just because the lender said, yeah, you can buy up to this much, doesn't mean you can buy that exact property that you want.
Yeah. We always talk about it. Okay, yeah, you're approved. Now we need to get whatever the property is that you're going to buy approved, and whether it's a condo or whether it's a home that doesn't appraise. If you're doing a CMHC borrow, they're going to want to figure out how much they're lending you, because if those margins are 5% and the market shifts a little bit, then CMHC is stuck holding the bag, right? So
yeah, and the CMHC aspect of it made it more difficult because there's only a couple high ratio lenders to go to. If it was a conventional mortgage, we've got, there's 100 lenders out there that you can go to. A good mortgage broker can shop it around and find a lender that won't care, that will look at that building and say, yeah, they've already budgeted for this, and they're halfway through the construction of the remediation. We're fine. Yeah. But if CMHC says no, you've only got one other place to go to, and if they say no, then you're stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And then that brings in the last point number 5. How are buyers winning in condo competitions these days?
Well, you mentioned it earlier on with the status reviews. So we have a dedicated status review team at my office because we're sufficient size to do this. So I've got a team of people that all they do is status reviews, and they maintain a database. So we have a database of almost every condominium in Ottawa, almost everyone in Toronto or the greater Toronto area. So if somebody's buying something, and whether they have a status certificate or don't, if they have a status certificate, we have the people that can review it fast. So if they want to put an offer in and they're in competition, we can get that review done, before the time is when everybody has to submit their offers. And our offer for our client is going to go in without a condition on status review. So that will cut out half of the other buyers. That will make our offer that much more attractive to the seller. And so that's technique number 1. If there isn't a status certificate, we'll go back in time. We'll look at when the last time we reviewed that building was, and maybe we'll be able to gather enough information. Let's say we didn't even review that status certificate ever for that building. We'll look back and see who did the last purchase in that building. What brokerage did it? We'll go back to that agent or we'll ask you, Sean, to go back to that agent. Listen, it was an agent from some other brokerage. Call them up, get their status certificate. Their client just bought 4 weeks ago. We'll review that one for that unit, because the status certificates are really 90% of it is the health of the building,
Right.
and only 10% or even less, let's say 5%, relates to the unit specifically. And that's really only whether the owner is in arrears or not of common expenses, which is dealt with in the agreement of purchase and sale. So we can deal with that problem. If they're in arrears, it'll be paid up prior to closing, no problem, or we'll have it paid from the proceeds. We can deal with that. But the health of the building is what we really need to know, the health of the condominium corporation. And that, is disclosed in any status certificate. So what we do is that's how we go about doing it. But we can only do it because we have a team. We've got lots of people that have the time to do the research and maintain the database. And so, if you go to, I don't want to knock any other lawyers, but if you go to a one-man show or, a small firm and they don't have that, then you're missing out, because, we help people in this marketplace that are buying condominiums win the day, because we're of a sufficient size to be able to maintain that database, get the information, do the research, and help you and the client win.
Yeah, ultimately it's just economies of scale. It's the same, it's the same, maybe on a bit of a bigger picture, as if I'm telling a client, hey, you know what, if you're buying a house and you want to see it and it's in Canada, and I'm also working with another client, they want to go and see a house at the same time in Orleans, I can't do it. Right? It's not possible to be in two places at once. So having more people who are on the team, who are a part of it, hey, this way I can now duplicate myself. And the more times I can duplicate myself, the better service that I'm able to offer the clients, right? Because then I can show a house in Canada and a house in Orleans.
Yeah, and Megan, who runs my status review team, absolutely. So, and also the person, Megan, who runs my status review team, she went to law school in University of Sydney, and she's like bright individual. She runs that. Her job is to run that status review team. She knows more about statuses than I ever will, because she is inundated in it. She's reviewing and supervising other people reviewing, hundreds, if not thousands of them, and she's become a real specialist in her field. That's what you want.
Yeah. There's a lot of value to specialization. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So we'll take a quick pause here. Of course, if you guys are liking what you're hearing, if you want to hear more, stick around for the second half, where we'll start to unpack some of the stuff a little bit more. As always, feel free to share this with anybody who you think it might be beneficial to. Like us, subscribe to the channel, and download us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll be right back after these words from our sponsor.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to serve a wide array of clients, including first-time homebuyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allow us to put our clients at the center of everything that we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you're interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our word from our local sponsor. As always, if you're liking what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, share with friends. I am a professional realtor. If you'd like to book an appointment with me, the Calendly link is down below, where you can book a private consultation where we unpack even deeper some of these things and how they apply to you and your family. But in terms of unpacking, there's some cool stuff that we sort of started to open up a little bit. In the first half, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it. And so the first was going deeper about this idea of the bank of mom and dad. And we're seeing it a lot, first of all, in terms of transmitting funds, generational wealth from one generation to the next, but there's some risks involved. And one thing that I know about you, Mitch, is that you're forward thinking enough that you can figure out what the risks are, and intelligent enough to figure out, okay, well, what can we put in place to mitigate some of those risks, right? Because that's what you're good at. So how do we do that? And I use the word prenup, and I don't know if that's maybe a scary word for some people. So what do we do when mom and dad are lending, son or daughter money, and they're attached to a partner who might be a shorter term partner? What's the solution? How do we solve it?
The starting point is, it's great that you use that word prenup, because that's the one word you don't want to use, because how in this example that I was talking about, I've got my friend who's the dad wants to give his daughter money to buy a condo, and she's in a 3-year relationship with a guy who he loves. I mean, like, he hopes that he's going to be the one, but at the same time, he's a practical person, and if things go wrong, he doesn't want to lose half of his $200,000 because they got married and then they split up a year later. So he's concerned, and fortunately, he reached out to me, which is great. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes, we get the client who is the daughter says, I'm buying this place and my dad's going to give me the money, and then we haven't even spoken to the dad or the mom or wherever that money is coming from, and now it's a couple days before closing, and then we get a frantic call saying, like, my dad is like talking about my boyfriend and the two of them, and he said he wants him to sign a prenup, and we're not even engaged yet. And then it spirals downhill from there. And the next thing you know, the boyfriend is talking to his friends and saying, like, my girlfriend's dad's like talking about a prenup. We haven't even got engaged, and the friends are saying, dude, what are you getting yourself into? And then it could ruin a relationship. So, like, prenup is not the word we want to talk about. We want to talk about, how do we get from point A to point B without pissing anybody off or ruining a relationship? And, if the daughter has the foresight to get her dad to talk to me or to talk to whatever lawyer they're dealing with, they can sit down or do a Zoom and talk about all the options. So, one option could be, there's different levels of security that the dad might be after. So let's say in this instance, the dad just wants to know that if they split up, a year later, 2 years later, whatever, 5 years later, I just want my daughter to get her. I want me and my daughter. We want the family wealth to stay with us. So okay, that's doable. Well, maybe a good solution for that would be, if your daughter's going to buy it and it's going to go in her name, we can register a second mortgage on the property, and she can get her financing with the bank. And after it closes, we can register a second mortgage for the $200,000. We can put an interest rate in it, or we can not put an interest rate in it. If we don't put an interest rate in it, it's fine. It just means that something goes wrong, you get your $200,000 back if the property gets sold, if they were married and he had a right to that property. If we put an interest rate in it, you could waive the collection of the interest. Let's say we put 5% interest rate in it, and that 5% will accrue. So if they're married for 5 years, that 5% can continually accrue. So if their marriage breaks down 5 years later, you'll get back $200,000 plus the accrued interest. So it's not a windfall for the boyfriend who's now the husband. We can structure something like that. If you don't find it palatable to have a second mortgage on, or maybe the first mortgage you're getting says you may not put any secondary financing on the property, different scenario. Maybe then we have a promissory note signed where it's just evidence that there's a debt that the dad is going to be paid back at some time. And it's not as good as registering a mortgage, but if you have the boyfriend acknowledge it, and the boyfriend says, I acknowledge that there's a promissory note, then the boyfriend can't say, oh, I always thought this was all her money and I'm entitled to half of it. Right. So then you've got a paper trail, and it's much more palatable, and it's not as, serious as registering that second mortgage on the property, and it keeps the first mortgagee happy too. So, we have these discussions. The point is, you got to start the conversation somewhere, depending on what the situation is with the individuals involved. And there's lots of options at our disposal, but the discussion should happen early on. In the case with this girl wanting to buy the condominium, they hadn't even put an offer in yet, and the dad is reaching out to me saying, "What do I say to my kids?" Because he really likes this guy and doesn't want to piss him off either. He just wants to help. And what's the best way forward?
Well, yeah, and it comes with the foresight about the future, right? It's like, hey, here's what might happen in the future. We don't know that it will or it won't. How can we run this so that we're protected in the future, but not at the expense of the relationships that we have in the present? Because nobody wants it to be weird around like Easter dinner and everybody's there and like, oh, well, you better, serve me more mashed potatoes because you're into me for $200,000. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants that weird dynamic to be at play. Everybody just wants things. I think parents just want to help their kids, and like you said before, these kids need all the help they're going to get. I think about my kids. My kids are 5 and 2. And I'm thinking like,
Yep.
how are they ever going to buy? Like, I'm thinking about I need to be buying a house like a rental property for them now, so that they'll have built some equity,
Yep.
over the course of the next, 20 years or whatever.
So I've got another good scenario for you. What about no boyfriend, no girlfriend? I've just got 3 kids and I want to help them all buy houses, and they're not dating anybody.
Yeah.
But I'm skeptical about my kids' ability to live life on their own. So I don't want to just give them $200,000 and let them buy their own place. What if they put another line of credit on the property? What if what if I'm making it too easy for them to do, there's a potential for them to do bad things.
Right.
Then how am I going to protect? Like, I want to help them, but at the same time, I want to keep a little bit of a tab on them.
Right.
So, they're not married, they're not dating anybody, but I just want to keep I want to have my foot in the door so I know what's going on. Maybe I should go on title with my kids. Maybe I should go on title for 1% of that condominium and let my kid have 99% of that condominium. If I go on title, my kid will get a much better mortgage rate because my income will be included with it. But also, if my kid does anything with that property, I will know about it because I've got that 1%. So I'm still in the know. My kid can't go out and get some, private loan on it or whatever because he wants to go out and buy Bitcoin. I will know.
Right.
That's important too.
Yeah. That's a good way to do it. And it, I mean, again, all of this runs into the potential for weird family dynamics, right? So there's always that risk of like, oh, well, you can't, I imagine from the kid's point of view is, oh, you just let me lead my life, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of different ways to play it. And I don't think that people think about how to protect their future selves and do the appropriate things today, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we can go on forever talking about the different variations of the bank of mom and dad, but you never know until you delve into it what the concerns are going to be. So let's say in the situation where I'm just described, the 99%, 1%, it could be great for the kid who's going to get that mortgage. He's going to get a better deal from whatever bank he's dealing with because now he's got the dad supporting him. Everything is wonderful, except then you're talking to the dad and says, yeah, and I'm probably going to refinance my property next year. And because my mortgage is up. Say, okay, that's a different problem because now when you're going to refinance, you're going to have, even though you're 1% on your kid's mortgage, that debt is showing up on your credit bureau as well. Yeah. It may make a different situation on your ability to get more money because you may be wanting to refinance to take equity out to buy a cottage.
Yeah.
You may not be able to get money out of your place because you can't support extra debt because you're already supporting your kid's debt.
Right.
So we need to have that conversation too, to figure out, if the dad says, oh, don't worry, I'm not, I'm just doing a straight refi and I don't need any more money, no problem. But if he says, I'm going to need money for my business in the future, I'm going to need money I want to buy a condo in Florida or a cottage or whatever, whole different ballgame. And then we have to approach that subject differently.
Well, and again, it all comes back to future planning, right? If you have a clear vision of where it is that you want to be as an individual, then like I say, you can plan for it now. And then again, between like the conversation that we have with our clients is, hey, tell us everything, right? And then it's the same conversation that you're having with your clients. Say, I can't give you the right advice unless I know the whole thing. Where do you want to go? And asking the right questions of our clients will help us, serve them better. So shifting gears.
The good news is, like for you,
Yeah.
you're a great agent. So you ask the questions and then you call me and you
Yes.
tell me the situation that your client's in. And then I'll give you what I think the answer is, or else I'll say like, okay, have the client just call me so I can go through it with them.
Right.
A lot of agents out there don't take that step. And like, kudos to you because you do it.
Thanks. Well, serving our clients is the thing that's most important to me about this whole thing. So thanks for saying that. Not why we're here. So shifting gears a little bit so I can check my ego. Away from,
sorry about that.
no, that's good. That's all good. So moving away from the bank of mom and dad, talking a little bit more about that letter of transmittal, because for me that's something that stuck out. Is like, hey, here's a great opportunity on the listing side, to set something up with the home inspectors that we're working with, to maybe do a pre-listing inspection for all of our listings, property dependent if it needs it or not, and then have a conversation about, well, what can we offer to those potential buyers, right? I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, on the listing side, if you're hiring somebody to do a pre-listing inspection, you as agent will have that conversation with that inspector and your client and say, look, let's find out right now, what's it going to take to get the buyer to be able to rely on that inspection. And then you can actually have that conversation with the other agents that are bringing you offers, saying, look, I've already spoken with our inspector. He's willing to sign a letter of transmittal so your client can rely on his inspection. That'll be X number of dollars. If your client wants to spend a couple hours with him through the house after the fact, that'll be this is the fee. And how nice is it in giving confidence to that buyer? You're doing your seller a service by instilling confidence in whoever that buyer might be with that property. I think that's a great strategy in the market that we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to wrap this all up, I don't want to go too long, but today is, as the date of recording, April 13th. The date that this goes out to the general public might be different later on in the month with Easter coming up. But the Bank of Canada just announced, it's 11 o'clock right now, so they just announced the rate hike, another half point up to 1%. And so my belief, and you can tell me yours, is that it's going to continue to confuse the market that we're in. And once the dust settles, we'll wind back up in about the same place that we're at, specifically in Ottawa. But maybe not 20 or 25% growth per year, maybe more like 10 or 15 or trickling down to 5. You've been around the real estate world, I think, for longer than I have. What do you see in terms of the effect that all of these changes all happening at the same time with the Bank of Canada, the war across the world, the inflation, all that sort of stuff? Get out your crystal ball, Mitch. What do you think?
I think that a lot of dynamics scare people away from the market. I think the war is more serious than rate hike, but I think the war goes hand in hand with why there are rate hikes and inflation, and as well as the pandemic that we're in or coming out of. So anything that creates a different environment in our geopolitical world creates fear in buyers and sellers. So I even look at an election. When it's an election year, as you get closer and closer to that election, usually like a month before an election, let's say a federal election, people stop putting their houses on the market. And then, that however, the election is never a landslide for anybody. It's usually it's relatively the status quo. And, things slowed down before the last federal election. And then, okay, so it's another minority government. And 2 weeks later, the market was exactly back to where it was before. So with interest rate hikes, the Bank of Canada has been transparent about what their intentions are, and they've told us that the interest rate hikes are going to happen. I wish that they would only be in quarter point increments. I don't like half point increment because I think anytime you shock the marketplace, it scares people. So similar to the provincial government announcing the 20% non-resident speculation tax over all of Ontario. Well, guess what? That's a big headline. Everybody that's non-resident is going to have to pay 20% more. How many deals are really non-residents in Ontario? It's a fraction of 1%. It's so minuscule, but it's a big headline. And the big headlines are what make people nervous.
Right.
So, as time goes by, people realize nothing's changed.
Right.
In Ontario, we have a supply issue. It's, they're not building enough properties for all the people that are coming to Ontario. We've probably got 300,000 immigrants coming to Ontario. They need places to live, and we're not building enough houses for them. And the development process is archaically slow. Those problems are real, and they take years and years to fix. It's not an overnight thing. But the government wants to show that they're doing something. So let's tax the investors, foreign investors, 20%.
Yeah.
Great. How many of them are there?
Yeah.
6. No.
Yeah.
That's so it is in some respects comical. So
Yeah.
I do think that the war puts a lot of fear, and if it escalates, it will create more fear. But fundamentally, I think that our marketplace is on good sound footing. People, like I said, with so many people coming to Ontario, they all need places to live, and we're only going to increase the number of people that we bring into the country. The objective is that they go everywhere in the country. But you and I know that they may go to Flin Flon, Manitoba, but eventually they'll end up in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, because that's where their community is. And so the urban centers are going to continually have pressure of people coming in, and if there's limited supply, prices are still going to go up.
Right. Exactly.
So my feeling is that prices are still going to be rock solid in the urban centers, and the volume of transactions are probably going to be down, maybe 10% this year. But that's okay,
Sure.
And then there's a silver lining to it too, because when people get nervous, like, I've listened, I was on a call yesterday in Barrie, and there were a couple agents on the call saying, and they've been in multiple situations like for the last 2 years in Barrie on almost every property. And it's like, I listed this property, it's been on the market 10 days, I haven't had an offer. Oh my God, my client's freaking out. What am I going to do? So that scenario is a great opportunity for a buyer.
Yes. Yeah.
Like wherever, when somebody's got fear in what they're listing, and if they, oh my God, I haven't got an offer, put in a lower offer.
Yeah.
Maybe that buyer will be able to scoop up a property at a half decent price.
Yeah.
So there's always there's always a benefit and a detriment to every situation. And you just have to look for that.
Yeah. I think over the next little bit, what we'll see, and when I say a little bit, I mean 2, 3, maybe 6 months, we'll see the supply. I mean, the supply is crazy low. I think the demand will be lower simply because people are confused, right? Buyers are scared. We're not getting 10 offers on properties now. Sometimes we're just getting 2 or 3, right? Or maybe 0. Now what do I do, right? As agents, I saw an article that said that the buyer confidence is as low, the lowest that we've seen since 2010. And so a savvy buyer will move in right now knowing that the real estate is always a long-term purchase, right? It's just like for you, right? You're setting something up today for 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so in terms of timing the market, when things are going like this, if everybody's saying, I'm not buying a house right now, I'm not buying a house right now, I'm not buying a house right now, put yourself in the situation where you say, you know what, I'm going to buy a house right now. And don't be offer number 11, be offer number 1, right? I think it's a great time for buyers, and sellers can still take advantage because the buyers are understanding what they have to pay as today's price based on the sales that have happened for the last 90 days. So
yeah, the worst thing you can do as a buyer is resign yourself from the equation. You can't take time out. You can't say, I can't stand, all these bidding. I don't want to be any part of it. I'm not going to look for a house. that's the worst thing you can do. You have to stay engaged. It's like, being on the Senators, even though you're a substitute player and you're not getting the time you want. If someone gets hurt, you have to be prepared to jump into that game and play your best.
Yeah.
And, so even if it's not the market that you like, you have to continually stay engaged with what the properties are that you're after and be looking at them. And because when the opportunity does come up, when you find out, Sean, that there was something that should have gone in multiples, but this week nobody came to bid, and you call your client, your client has to be able to react. Your client can't say, oh, well, I haven't been following, I don't really know that house, I can't react that quickly, forget it. That's not good.
And then you miss, right?
Yep. And then you miss out on what could be a great opportunity.
Yeah. I think that's a great spot to wrap it up, Mitch. You're echoing a lot of the sentiments that we've been talking about time and time again on the podcast. So I appreciate you coming here, and I appreciate the different perspective on it. Thanks very much.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the home warranty program. Do you want to leave that for another podcast, or do you want to mention it?
Yes, sorry, I do want to jump into that. So, and I'll tell you guys the story is I recently was representing a seller, and the seller wanted to have a clause in the the buyer wanted to have a clause in the APS saying that, hey, I want to I want the seller to warranty these specific things: plumbing, electrical, furnace, mechanical, et cetera, and the seller had never lived in the property, so they weren't comfortable warranting those things. And so I said, hey, we actually have a great program that will cover all of these issues for the first year, and that was able to benefit my seller client because of this program that you've got through Chicago Title. So yeah, just fill us in a little bit about it, Mitch.
Yeah, well, it started in the pandemic, so pandemic comes March of 2020, and all of a sudden we're named essential services. So buying and selling of houses can still happen, but people can't get into those houses to view them. So I'm wondering, okay, how is this market going to work? So I knew that Chicago Title had a program with Encompass Home Warranty, and they were offering a warranty on 5 things, basically heating and air conditioning systems, plumbing, electrical systems, and hot water tank. And they were offering, if you got title insurance, you could get a 6-month warranty for those things if you bought your title insurance from Chicago Title. So I went to Chicago Title and I went to Encompass, and I said, I want to expand this program and give every buyer a 1-year warranty. So if they're buying a house and we're closing the deal, every single person gets a 1-year free warranty, courtesy of our law firm and Chicago Title. And we put that in place. It was April of 2020, and we've kept it in place ever since. Because even though now you can do your inspections don't always come up with what you're after. So best example I can give is my own house. I actually, if I'm going to sell something, actually I'm not even selling something, if I'm going to give something away, I want to be confident that it's the right product. So I got the home warranty for my house and for my rental property. Wouldn't you know, this summer, my air conditioning went in my house. And I said earlier, my house is 10 years old. Air conditioning shouldn't have gone after 10 years, but it did. And so I called Encompass. It's a $50 deductible. They send over an air conditioning technician. I pay $50. That's good. Next day, there's a guy at my door inspecting it. He says, your compressor's gone. I can replace the compressor, but your whole system works on Freon. So I can't really replace the compressor because your system, I can get another compressor, but the system is going to be with Freon. And to replace Freon as it goes is a fortune, and it's terrible for the environment. I really think you should get a new system. It's like, okay. Next thing I know, I get a call from Encompass. Encompass says, we spoke with the technician. We're going to pay $4,000 for a new air conditioning system for you. It's like, what? You're like, it's not, we're going to give you the value of your 10-year-old used air conditioner. We're writing you a check for $4,000. You can give it to the technician that you met with, or you can hire your own air conditioning guy, but you have to get, we're suggesting you get a new air conditioner. Here's the money for it. It was amazing. I was blown away because you know how it is with car insurance. If you get in an accident, we'll give you the current value of your used car, and that's it. Yeah. They paid for a full new air conditioner for me, which was amazing. So the beauty of it is twofold. One thing is the warranty part, where they'll fix things and pay for it. That that is only up to $10,000 of damage. And it's really designed for emergency repairs. But having a guy come out, so if I had circuit breakers that were blowing on me, they'll send out an electrician to look at my panel for $50. And I don't have to, I call 1-800 number, it's done. I don't have to go looking, or, normally what I would do is I'd call you, Sean. I'd say, Sean, I need an air conditioning guy. And you'd say, okay, I got a guy, here's the number. And then I call him and maybe he's out of town, maybe he's too busy. This is just one-stop shopping. Great solution.
And any of the guys or girls who are coming to your house are not $50 an hour. Like they're gonna, it's $100 for them to show up, or $200 for them to show up, not the $50 deductible. And I mean, a lot of the houses we're selling, the furnace works. It's also 25 years old, right? And so it's a really great way to mitigate that risk. Or the AC works, but it's 25 years old. I think that's it's a great solution. Or the hot water tank works, but it's on its last legs. Well, hey, you know what? It works on closing. You're covered, right?
Yep. Yeah, and you do your home inspection. The home inspector may say this furnace is 15 years old. It probably has a lifespan of another 5 years. It's like, okay, I'm going to get a warranty for a year, and if I extend it beyond the year, it's $17 a month to continually warrant that furnace and that electrical system and the hot water tank and everything. It's money well spent.
I agree, and most people don't even think to do it. So I think I hope people stuck around until the end, because that's probably the biggest nugget. Maybe I'll do an intro again and say, make sure you stick around until the end to find out the real deal. Mitch, thanks so much for being on with me today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, considering how much you've got going.
My pleasure.
As always, guys, if you're liking what you're hearing, feel free to share this with anybody who's thinking about buying or selling or investing in real estate. Download us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can like the channel, subscribe to the channel by hitting the bell and getting notifications. And as always, you can schedule a direct appointment with me with the Calendly link below. Any last words, Mitch, before we sign off?
It's been a pleasure being here, and thank you. This has been great.
Yeah, okay, well, the pleasure is mine. All right, so everybody, until next time, keep it real.
Collective.